Next, we are heading towards second panel discussion. So it's basically payment security, thinking ahead of the curve. So this session will be moderated by our business head for SAARC region and Asia Pacific, Mr. Nitin Bhatnagar. He will be moderating the session. The panelists are Mr. Rishi Rajpal. He's the Director, IT Governance in Concentrix Corporation. I would like all the panelists to come over the stage. Mr. Harish Prabhu, MD and CEO, Sarvatra Technologies Private Limited. I would say Mr. Harish Prabhu has come pretty early, I think around 7 o'clock. He's waiting from 7 o'clock early morning. Mr. Ashutosh Jain, he's the CISO of Axis Bank. He has also come up. And Mr. Ramesh Themanna, founder and CEO, Penguin Payments. So I will hand it over to Mr. Nitin to moderate the session. But just before we start the session, let me just give you a brief about it. What we need to do in terms of security. We need to think a little ahead of what we are doing as of now. As the industry trend is towards, everyone is getting into the exploitation of whatever the insecurity that we have or whatever security clauses are not available or security features are not available within our applications. So that's what we are going to talk about. Over to you, Nitin. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, very good afternoon. So before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Nitin Bhatnagar, and I, as rightly said by Sushir, I head the business at SAARC, business development for the SAARC region. And the topic for the discussion, probably, is revolving around the payment security, thinking ahead of the curve. And to set the context right, I just want to, we'll be having a round of questions, question and answer session right now, and then probably we'll be juggling on the questions which probably from the crowd which may come up, and also then we will have a conclusion remarks for which I also want will be having my colleague Renju Varghese to have a few of the questions to get answered from the crowd as well as from the panelists. So I think Renju is already here. I think I would like to welcome Renju on the stage as well. Can we have a round of applause? Yeah, thanks, Renju. So to start with, just to set the context right, so the panel discussion is going to be revolving around the payment security in the new age of the payments. That I think we have since morning we have been hearing about the payment innovations and the kind of the risk that we are carrying along as well, right? And the role that the security standards which are evolving and which have been already there, like PCI DSS, are going to play, and also the major risk factors in the payment innovations. So to start with, I will throw a question to Rishi. So can we start a discussion with what's hard in the payment security with the new emerging new technologies? What do you see, Rishi?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Rishi. I'm part of Concentrix Corporation. So what I could get from the summit, and I think what's hot in the payment security world is we are moving towards contactless payments, and physical card we may see a diminishing trend as the disruption in the market is to use mobile as one mode of payment, and that's going to increase. I think as a service provider, we've always lived in the world that we will never see a card, right? Because it was always card not present, and as back office, we never used to see a card. But I think merchants gradually follow in the same category as well. So I think that's the trend I look forward to.
That's true. I think that's a very beautiful insight to that. Mr. Harish, what would be your thought? What do you see as a hot in the payment security space? You being working with so many cooperative banks in India, and with the regulations like cybersecurity audits and compliances, what are your thoughts?
Yes. So I'm Harish Prabhu. I'm the MD of Sarvatra Technologies. We actually provide card-based solutions as well as cardless solutions to a whole lot of cooperative banks, more than about 350 cooperative banks across 25 states and 5 out of the 7 union territories. Now, and given the fact that these cooperative banks are primarily semi-urban and rural, at this point of time, I do not share the enthusiasm of the cardless world for this segment.
Sure.
Because first and foremost, this segment or this sector is yet to see carding in a big way.
Okay.
So the challenge is that most of these banks and hence its end customers, right? The adaptation or the adoption of technology in the form of a core banking solution itself has just happened over the last 2-3 years.
Sure.
The incidence of carding to these banks' customers is in the process of happening.
So,
At the same time, there are some very forward-looking banks, but a very minuscule minority. They are also going in for mobile banking.
So you mean to say that the cooperative banks are on their way and they should be able to get to the technology within a year, right?
Yeah, it depends, but the adaptation or the adoption of technology is far, 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 far slower in these
Right,
banks.
with the NPCI having so many regulations on the cooperative banks because they deal directly with them. So I think there's a push altogether for you, right?
Yeah, we are trying to push, we are trying to do our best, but
Sure.
still
Thanks.
we are in the card world.
Thank you, Mr. Harish. Yeah, so Ashish, Ashutosh, so I just, the same question for you, what do you see in the banking industry, how you overcome those challenges, the new innovations which happens day to day, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
So when it comes to payment security, I think there are 3 distinct things that needs to be addressed. The first is actually the client-side security. Now, client-side security, as was rightly brought out by Rishi also, the form factors are changing, and the form factors brings their own risk. You can use mobile, you can use wristwatch, you can use any kind of form factor for making the payment. That brings their own risk. Now, there are 2 kinds of risks that are there. One is actually with respect to the firmware that actually interacts with your application. So the firmware actually assurance, whether that is good to go, whether it is rooted, or what kind of all the kind of things, that is one thing which actually needs to be done. On the client side, the second part is the app, which actually is your piece of code, which actually is interacting over there, whether that is secure or not. With the latest technologies like SSL pinning and others, which we know, working for the app, with how fast we are adopting and making that as a standard is definitely one of the things which we need to see. The second piece is on the fly encryption, between the client and the server that we have. That is a second piece that has to be taken care with due care, I would say. And the third thing is the server-side validations, which a lot of time people actually choose to ignore because of a lot of speed at which they need to deploy. So I think these 3 things are extremely important to be taken care, and especially with respect to the common men, when we are actually talking about Digital India and all those initiatives, with common men, when people like us who actually know a lot and still fall prey to phishing attacks, I'm just wondering those people, those who have never given any kind of digital identity in their life, and now they are suddenly having a digital identity, if they are, they can be actually, easily phished. They will never ever come to know what has happened. So I think that has to be taken into consideration, the convenience and the security, a fine balance. And I think this kind of challenge has never happened in past. And I think security has to step up to actually meet that challenge.
Sure, I think that's also a very good insight to this. So Ramesh, coming back to you being into the mobile wallet business and being the payment banks coming up. So what do you see the hot in the security at this current scenario?
Yeah. So I'm really grateful we had a chance to look at that video because we can just extend from there.
Thank you.
And I feel this will be a great discussion because there's a clear split in opinions about what we think is feasible and not feasible. So when we started, we realized that 5% of us who are in this room with PAN cards and stuff are absolutely comfortable with the payments, cards per se. There's another 50% which is not yet ready, served by the gentleman at the other end of the panel. This is other 45%, you may call it Youngistan or whatever, who are ready, but today who don't have access to a bank-led channel. I think that is going to happen through the mobile. It's going to happen through a open payments platform. You got to bring in all the good things from the blockchain world here in terms of how do you maintain the immutability of the transaction. How do you ensure that you provide open APIs where merchants can build some stuff on top of it without having to spend 9 to 12,000 rupees, which today maybe a bank is subsidizing in terms of giving them the card terminals and stuff. So a lot of exciting stuff happening, and I definitely believe that mobile is the way to go.
Sure. So I think you see the mobile payments going ahead is one of the key changer.
The numbers for all the private mobile wallet operators are the key. But these guys have just offered recharges and bill payments and stuff. Imagine what can happen if you can extend that into the world of your local bus tickets, your Mumbai suburban rail tickets, your toll tickets. That's only going to happen via the mobile. And the way mobile scales and the way mobile can innovate, because you're in the internet world, agreed the threats are there. Now Ashutosh knows and has kind of bucketed them very well.
Sure.
But those are not insurmountable challenges.
Sure. Thanks, Ramesh. Thanks. So, any questions from the crowd for the panelist? Sure. So, the second question that we have for the panelists is that we are seeing a surge in the mobile wallets and the mobile payments. The biggest question which is arising, and day to day when we in our day-to-day job listen from the customers is that how to secure it, right? So, which standard should a wallet developer should follow? Right? So I think I'll start with Ramesh from here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So internally, this is what we do. Data in transit, obviously the first point. How do you ensure that every attack becomes very costly? Doesn't really matter whether the phone is, what state the phone is in. As long as you can ensure that you make the attack costly and replicate the attack cost on each and every device that you want to get access to, and make the attack window very narrow and split it over two channels, both the internet and the mobile channel. The chances of anybody trying to hack this whole thing and trying to make some financial sense out of it just evaporates, because there's no financial incentive. Your window is very narrow, which is the time it takes for a SMS to arrive or a USSD communication to happen or whatnot on the telecom channel. Alternately, you don't really have to worry about generating UIDs in the internet world. Generate them any number of times. If a bank wants to say that it wants to secure its mobile app every day, what's stopping them from doing it? They secure it, you get a new set of keys, and this is on top of HTTPS, and be my guest if you want to break into it.
Yeah, I understand that point. With the security point of view, when you're trying to say, when we talk about how we secure it, right, we are talking about, whether the applications, the mobile applications are going through kind of an application validation or application security.
Absolutely.
And,
So
as
makers, we can do whatever we think are the right practices, considering our interaction with CISOs from banks all over the world. But we also need validators, and even if today it's PCI, maybe something similar should come, which is very close to the mobile world. And you are the guys who should maybe propose that and take it forward to conclusion by whatever metrics you think from your experience of doing all the work you have done in terms of identifying breaches and stuff. So that is the first thing, data in transit. Sure. When it comes to data at rest, it's not just us. Even people who are operating closed wallets have, or rather should move from a DevOps world to a DevOps sec world. How do I ensure that my data center is the way it is? Right from the ports that are open to the subnets that are there to the kind of communication that's available. Right. DevOps sec is here to stay, and I hope and pray you guys come up with all the standards or the to start off with the recommendations. How do we move into a DevOps sec world, because closed wallets are a reality today.
Sure. Now moving to Ashutosh. Ashutosh, I have a question. I was been reading throughout some of the portals on the internet on a free content, can you say? It says that there are banks are in a typical situation where they have a situation where they have to develop the mobile applications inside, or they outsource it to the third party. So what are the challenges that you see as being working as an information security specialist within a bank? So what are the challenges that you see there?
So I would say build versus buy, definitely from security doesn't concern me till the time I get the access to the source code and I can actually look at the source code. I'm actually very, very, I would say, agnostic about whether it comes from inside or outside. But referring back to your original question of standards, I definitely would I would actually I caution this to my teams and my partners, and also as a general thing, that standards actually creates a mindset of checklist, and the checklist becomes, very narrow in the mindset. In these kind of scenarios where actually there is a huge unknown factor into this, one should not get bound by checklist and should actually go by, what best can go wrong. Keep scanning for, the vulnerabilities that are happening across the world, and so that you are actually absolutely up to the mark. As was actually brought in Nandan's, video also just now. I somehow felt that, if there is a standard which is made for UPI and that becomes static for at least a few years, then that in itself can become a bit more, dangerous, because this field is so much evolving that if you don't change it by the week, then probably, you may be outdated very soon. So I think that is a caution one should have, that one should be actually extremely dynamic and, up for adopting the change.
Sure. So coming back to the same, going back to the same question, when you were looking out when you talk about the source code, right? So are you not looking any kind of a certification from that mobile vendor, whom you are getting the
Yeah, of course. So
mobile
certifications are the basic expectations, but again, those certifications are as good as, a piece of paper unless you validate and you actually be rest assured that, indeed, it's,
Right.
there are no V's and wins. And having said that, I think a lot of actually in the wallet world, I think people should adopt the age-old method of detection and monitoring, because you should presume breach and you should actually have ways and means of detection and monitoring, else actually one is in for a big surprise.
Sure. I think that's really very insightful. Coming back to Harish sir. So just my point for you is that, being in the cooperative bank, sector, do you see the trend of the mobile wallets coming up now? Or how you see as a PSP, coming out with some innovation on the mobile wallets front?
See, the cooperative banking sector is a completely different sector than, the world that we are aware of. And within that, there are, sub-sectors which are, more on the agricultural side, the state cooperative banking sector versus the UCBs, which are like, small private banks. Now, obviously, there for these so many, I think, approximately 1,600 banks, right? As I said, it's a carding world as yet, but, slowly the mobile applications are being, pushed through by us. Wallets, yes, there is a latent demand and need for mobile wallets, which the cooperative bank customers are being wooed by the likes of the Paytm, the MobiKwik, etc. So their need for mobile wallets are being already met.
Right.
Not necessarily by their banks, but but independent mobile wallet players.
Right.
But definitely, the difference between, let's say, an urban customer and a cooperative banking customer in the semi-urban rural banking space is that they looked forward to their bank being able to provide them all of the services purely because it's a legacy of tradition, trust,
So they work on an outsourced model completely, if I have to put it across. So the banks, the cooperative banks, are like you acting as a PSP, so
Yeah,
they give the outsource the work to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do for them is that, we do their switching.
Right.
And they completely outsource the work to us because first is affordability for, meeting their requirements. They have, let's say, 100,000 customers only. And were they to, put their own infrastructure, it would not be viable. And so they rely on specialists like us to provide them on a shared infrastructure.
Right.
And like from a security angle also, everything gets taken care of by us rather than them.
Right. So you make sure that all the security standards have been followed before they go live.
Absolutely, and because we are, as an organization, we have to meet all the security standards which are required, PCI DSS, NPCI audits us.
Right.
So, unless we are, at the top of the heap in terms of the quality of security, we'll not be able to provide the services on a shared basis.
Right. Sure. Thanks. So Rishi, coming back to the same point, so from the BPO segment, I have not seen any kind of mobile wallets coming in. Do you see any innovations for the audience inside happening something?
See, from a BPO and ITES sector, we will see a shift from working in the office to work at home. So there's a huge talent that we need to tap. And since we work on sheer numbers, right, and we are very human intensive work, right? So work at home will come in a big way. I think we need to look at how the standards can be cope up to the new challenge that we are taking up, right? Considering PCI
Right.
DSS, which is very, very descriptive, talks about this requirement, that requirement, how those requirements will be met or tweaked for a work at home environment.
Right.
Talking about rural BPO, right? And that's also a big way which is coming, right? So considering we have BPO centers in the geographies where we are very, very good, right? Versus rural BPO, will we consider them as the same security standards? Will we kind of bring them down because of the skill set that is being there or stuff like that? So I think that is something I think we will have to look forward and work with the standards to see if how can we revise that.
Right. I think this question also I will just ask to put across to Renju also. So being a qualified security assessor, so how you see this happening? What are your thoughts on this?
On the BPO front or
On the BPO front, on the work from home
Sure.
concept.
So, as I said, the PCDSS as a standard, as Rishi said, is very descriptive in nature, and it says that we need to have firewalls, all those controls in place.
Right.
But the most important is that whether we can use a risk assessment approach and on how to secure that particular rural BPO kind of an environment. Right. So instead of implementing the entire PCDSS controls on that BPO environment, whether we can do a risk-based approach and either give only relevant information to that BPO customers, or sorry, the rural agents, and so that the cost of implementing security comes down drastically, and we'll be able to do that. So
Sure.
the industry is changing, and there's a lot of, along with these security improvements, there's a lot of technology that comes into picture. Like for the rural areas, for work from home option, there's a lot of new solutions that comes into market, which can be used for helping all the BPO industry to work.
So what you mean to say is that, if I have to put it across it to conclude it, that we have solutions available in the market which can be worked around, and we can get the BPO segment, also get the standards which have been in industry can be followed by them, right?
Yes, because the ITS
Yeah.
sector is moving to work from home option because
Sure.
of all the attrition and everything.
Sure.
So in the recent PCI committee meeting, out of the all the booths, around 10% of the booths were providing solutions for the work from home options. So that's the evolution that's
That's a
happening.
great insight to the audience as well, I think. Yeah, thanks Renju. Thanks Rishi for throwing the light on the same. So any questions from the audience? I think it's after the lunch, everybody's, so I think we need to do some, any questions, last? No. So I think I'm coming, then let's have some interesting question here now. So, so as per the sources globally, I have done a little bit research, and the predictions for 2016 are, cyber criminals to target the mobile wallets and the new payment technologies. Are we prepared to handle the scenarios which I'm going to tell you now, and to avoid the data breaches? So the first scenario are the payment gateways innovating the one-tap technologies, and what are the security challenges that we are going to face, and what kind of support from various organizations that industry experts are looking at. So I would like to start with Ramesh on this question. And
I don't think we are. I'll just quote a couple of things that have recently come out. There was this university in Florida which was studying the mobile apps being developed in the developing world, and from India they choose a few, and we felt quite badly. I mean, forget, even the way we were doing salting was kind of rudimentary,
Right.
I guess the case study in the morning comes to mind. So definitely no, there's a lot of gap with regards to where this app development is, and where it actually should be. You can understand from where they are coming from. They're more keen on their features in terms of giving a better experience on their business side. But on the payment side, they will end up being the weakest links in terms of data breaches and stuff. So we definitely are not. There's a lot of work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
From a payment gateway perspective, I guess it's a bit more, because it's a bit more distributed, you have different people, you know, creating the pins and sending them to you. I guess it can be handled much better by the payment gateways, because at the end of the day, the bank in some way or the form is involved, either the OTP generation or whatever, and different people have these different sets of information. At least in India, I don't see too many problems, as long as the OTP is still a part of the payment process.
Right. Right. So I think Ashutosh, can you throw some light on the prediction that we have been hearing a lot now on this mobile wallets and the new technologies which are coming up?
See, I don't think so that 2016 should be any different from previous years, because naturally these are something not new that payment gateways have been targeted. But when it comes to cyber, I would say warfare or basically cyber attacks, it is definitely not the form factor that those attacks are not having the form factor that it will be individual will be attacked. It is a massive kind of a campaign against an institution or payment mechanisms. Now, when it comes to such a kind of scale, what we essentially need to have is two things. One is actually monitoring at the individual institutional level, that they should have a good monitoring capacity, and secondly, a good collaboration among the various institutions to share the intelligence among them, so that people can be collaboratively, I would say, alert and basically responding to that kind of a threat. So if these two mechanisms are there, then I think collectively people, institutions can actually, handle such kind of things. This is no different from what has happened in past. It should continue.
But still, what are the security, kind of a security, support that you are looking at from the industry professionals? Like,
so it's very clear. If you are breached, you actually share the information discreetly with the peers, so that others can, I would say, be prepared for that. So before you are actually, it becomes a massive campaign across the institutions. You actually, kind of wake up and take preventive actions.
Sure. Then I think that answers. Yeah. So coming to Mr. Harish, so how you see this kind of cyber criminals being, targeting the mobile wallets and the new technology innovation? So, what are your thoughts on the same?
I think that we being in the field of finance or money, the field of finance will always have criminals, and they will be. And I guess it's proven that the criminals are smarter than the people who actually install security systems, right?
Right.
This is the case which has been there for quite some time. So obviously, I guess since mobile wallets and the adoption of financial transactions onto a new platform like a mobile, right, which gains traction, naturally it won't, leave the criminal to, leave this unnoticed. So obviously, I think as this adoption takes place exponentially, I think those attacks will also, come exponentially. So, I'm not saying something profound, but it's very commonsensical. So obviously, I think the industry as a whole should look at this in a very, very, significant, they should assign their significant mind share to it. And I can give you a case in point, in 2011, I was, my bank account, I had a cyber fraud. My 1,75,000 rupees was removed from my bank account at ICICI Bank.
Okay.
And now that was the handiwork of both offline as well as online. There was technology used. At the same time, there were certain loopholes in the mobile companies' customer service showroom where anybody could have gone and shown up as myself along with some fake ID and stated my phone is lost, and then they would deactivate the SIM and then reactivate it. So I'm sure that was when I was using internet banking.
Right.
So now in the mobile world, there will be something new. So
Absolutely.
I hope not. I'm once again the victim.
Right. So obviously not. Rishi, if you can just throw some light, so where Mr. Harish highlighted his incident, what are the things that you can think of as an industry professional? What are the security measures that we can take ahead?
I think anything which gains momentum, I think it gets attacked, right? We've seen that. Microsoft has been attacked for a while because the installation base is huge. Mobile wallet is gaining momentum, it will get attacked. I mean, there's no brainer about it.
Right.
What can we do about it? The problem with mobile wallets is there is no boundary for them, right? It's on the handsets with the users. And that too, I would consider not very, very educated users, because I mean, when you install an app, we hardly look at what kind of accesses it'll have on our phone, right? So I mean, an even compromised endpoint can have an impact on a mobile wallet. I think the only mitigation I see is the strong control measure from a security perspective, defense in depth, layered security, and I think it's a shared responsibility of an end users and mobile wallet operators. I think we talked about moving from confidence from a merchant machines to a owner's machine,
Right.
but how many of us really trust our machine, right? We install so many applications day in, day out. Do we really trust our handset? Correct?
Right.
So I think future I see is the mobile shipping will come in the picture, wherein mobile wallet operator may not allow an applications to be installed and do some checks before that application gets installed. And if it sees some compromise, it may say that your mobile is not eligible for mobile wallet.
Right. I think that's really, I think we hope that we get such kind of innovation and we are able to get through. Coming back, thanks, I think thanks guys for this. So next question I will, in the past, last question, Ashutosh highlighted that we should talk about the breaches that happens to our peers. Right. Why to the peers? Can't we make it public? Can't we make it public to the crowd, to the industry, and give a lesson that this is how it has happened? Like we have the laws in the US and UK, right?
No, so I'm not talking about laws. So whenever it's a regulatory notification required, then definitely one has to comply to that.
Right.
But even if one is not in the ambit of regulatory disclosure, then also actually, people may be shy for various reasons, actually, shareholders or otherwise. So then, given that, I would say caution. It's at least, if it is actually shared well in the well-educated peers, then at least people can be, a bit more sensitized, because these things actually can be very well misinterpreted by anybody, in the social circles. So that's the reason caution has to be applied, and people do generally apply caution in such.
So you say there should not be a law, or we should come up with a law?
No, so wherever the laws are already there,
Right.
in certain specific regulated entities, the laws are there
Okay.
with respect to the mandatory disclosures or otherwise.
Okay, okay. So there is a law, you say, that which has been given by certain. Right, Ramesh, your thoughts on the payment breach disclosures. So we do not have any law, right? Other like, we have in US and UK. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that we should have the same to avoid such scenarios happening so frequently?
Yeah, I think I see value in that, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of learning, and these events are bad, but the kind of effect they bring in terms of education, in terms of ensuring most of the people get to know about these things, they have a far-reaching effect. For example, if you look at the settlement suit for Target when their data got hacked, one of the things that the judge mentioned was that they should have a CISO.
Right,
So till that point of time, they did not have a CISO.
right.
So
Very
when
good.
these things happen,
think-
and when you share, and when you let the whole world know that this is how it has happened, it basically helps us become more and more secure. At the end of the day, cash costs us. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for entrepreneurs. Why should we? But I'm from that boat. I built a company where we had 10 million registered users,
Right.
but we're not able to collect 60 rupees from people who wanted freemium offerings. So
Right.
for you to go to that stage where entrepreneurship really takes off to the next level in India, funding, acquisitions, whatever, payments needs to be solved,
Yeah.
and that's going to happen when these initiatives come forward to when
Right.
it should all work towards that common goal. And secondly, it's not just about payments. Like even in the case of cooperative banks, the kind of money that is now being pushed to Aadhaar, and all kinds of agricultural subsidies and all. The government is solving the first step of the problem, where they're ensuring that cash is not lost in transit. If we extend that logically over an open platform with APIs, you can ensure that that money, whichever is the educational subsidy or the agricultural subsidy, gets spent at the right merchants who get registered as people who can only accept those payments. Doesn't really matter if I'm if a girl born to a farmer who drinks a lot still gets educated. So the kind of things you can do on the internet world, which I don't think are possible on the core banking system or on the switch, can only happen through these kind of initiatives.
Sure, sure.
Sorry, I covered a lot of things there.
Yeah, I think, but I think there's a lot of to it also. Rishi, what are your thoughts? Considering, I've been hearing, BPO has always been a target, right? There have been some, string around on getting the card details from the BPO segment. So what do you see, how you see that this happening? And, do you think that really a disclosure law would help here if something happens? And what are the security measures that you think that we can take?
Our industry is actually highly regulated because we serve some of the major customers in US, UK geographies, right? So
Right.
where we have disclosure as part of the contract, right?
Right.
We may not disclose within the India jurisdiction, but we'll have to disclose it with the customer. For us, the key is education and awareness, which is we need to drive it consistently across all employees and reiterate again and again and again. Because in India, I mean, privacy is not in our culture, right? I mean, we've grown up in the environment where sharing is caring, right? So unfortunately, we've not been able to draw a line what to share, what not to share, right? So we constantly educate our people that what an SSN means to a US citizen, same applies to a PAN for an Indian citizen, right?
Right.
So I think education and awareness is the key, and especially the demographics matter. So in BPO ITS sector, the average age is from 22 to 34, right? So I think these people are on a ride. So I think education and awareness with a strong disciplinary action helps there.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Mr. Harish, what are your thoughts on this, considering the banking, you're coming from the banking vertical, right? So what do you see, there should be a law, such law to, if there's any breach, any incident which happens, that you have to immediately report. Though CERT has that provision of reporting any incident immediately to certain. But do you think a law would work in the Indian context?
Definitely. I mean, in my past role, I've been a banker. So
Right.
in normal banking parlance, if there's a breach, right? I mean, I'm talking of somebody
Sure.
breaches some procedure, and especially people who have the authority to do so, right? There are strong punitive measures which are actually a deterrent
Okay.
for anybody to do so. So today, two people can collude and can do a lot of things which will be detrimental to the organization, detrimental to the entire ecosystem.
Right.
So unless and until you have specific measures, the same logic has to be applied in this context.
Sure, sure. I agree. Questions? Any questions for the panel? Yeah.
In the panel discussion, there were two different viewpoints. One was banking related to a cooperative sector, and one was related to a wallet. Okay, and there is a wide gap between addressing both the scenarios. So my first question is to Mr. Prabhu, that in case of cooperative sector, what are the fraud risk management guidelines when even the core banking solution is not validated from the security point of view? Anyone can sell any product at any pen, any bank, in cooperative bank. And when there is a risk or an incident, how the scenario can be handled with a reference to a cyber forensic?
Sorry, could you repeat that question in a slightly proceed manner?
One is that when we are talking about the incident of fraud, so when the core banking solutions in a cooperative sectors are not validated
Okay.
from the security point of view by any regulator, how far we are able to manage those risks?
Can I take that question?
Yeah, please.
Sure. So from forensic analysis that we have carried out, that what I conducted, is that it's irrespective of where the fraud has evolved from. So if it's a card breach, it's not mainly the core banking solution which has been breached. It is the switch or the card management system which has been breached, or the embossing files which has been leaked out. So, and most importantly, one is the external hackers who's coming and doing it, but more importantly, it's about the internal system, whether it's the internal users or the actual account holders who can do the fraud. So to answer your question, in a banking industry, if it's a core banking, we have a core banking which has not been either PADS validated or PCI audited, and if a breach happened, so only after the forensic analysis we can able to prove that from where it has happened and how it has happened, and then take measures. If I'm able to answer your question.
What you have mentioned is a corrective measure.
Yes.
But what about the preventive measure? That this type of breach doesn't happen in this scenario. So there is nothing from a regulator point of view, from cooperative sector.
Yeah.
I think that's the.
I think Ashwani from.
Maybe my colleague Ashwini Sharma, he will be able to answer
Yeah.
it better.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ashwini. To answer these questions, in RBI has specified for each and every bank, whether it is a private sector bank or whether it is a cooperative sector bank, the guidelines are same for both types of banks. So fraud and risk management per se is common for all, whether it is a ICC bank or it is a small cooperative bank. If we talk about the fraud and risk management, or there is any fraud which has happened based on a card, so as a preventive actions, we have all the certifications in place. It is like PCI DSS, the switch is PADSS. Secondly, apart from the infrastructure side, the peoples who are involved and engaged in the services providing to the customers and which are involved with the banks should not be having an access to the core things which are not to be published to the public or the bank individuals. So we are taking all the security measures at the infrastructure level as well as to the people management things also. I hope I have.
Sure.
Yeah, also, for instance, our company handles millions of card data. There is no way in hell or high water where I, as the managing director of the company, can access any card data at all. I can do that provided, I collude with two of my other colleagues. And there are significant checks and balances, both physical as well as in terms of, digital, which can actually prevent me from doing so. I mean, we can get into details, but
Yeah, I think that's. I think to conclude, I think there are controls which are already there, and I think we have to follow that. I think there's no second thought on that. And any other questions that we have? Yeah, Ron.
Hi, my question is regarding the discussion we had over the work from home. So PCI already have certain measures where it states that if you are taking a remote connection from home or anywhere else, you need to have at least you have to have a two-factor authentication and you have to have a personal firewall software installed on your machine. So apart from this, are there any other security measures that we should take if we allow this kind of environment which is work from home?
The work at home is a little tricky because your physical security controls goes for a toss because you can't control that. I think the controls that we need to stress on, I think one is taking control from home. I was more coming from a perspective that people taking calls from home directly from the customer. And I think the controls there is that environment should be completely streamed on the user desktop. User desktop should be completely isolated from the environment you operate on. So that should be independent. And there has to be very, very strong background check process for the employee, complemented by workforce management where access can be commissioned, decommissioned on the fly. So those were some of the controls from a work at home perspective.
Thanks, Rishi.
Just to add to one more point is that the new solutions which are in the market, they're able to, so if you take a call, just for the card related information, they're able to take that particular call and directly send it to payment gateway. So at any point of time, the user won't have access to the card number. So it's like there's a lot of permutation combination that's there, and there's not current one structured solution which we can implement. So it's an evolving field, and I think there's a lot of new innovations that will come up in this work from home option.
Sure. Thanks, Renju. Thanks. We have one question from Rana from Times of Money. Yeah.
So one question is related to the disclosures. So I think there is a perception that if you disclose information about a breach, you have a reputation loss and you suffer customer trust and all that goes for a toss, right? So, and in fact, I have been part of systems where similar security incidents have happened in different segments of the bank, and they have not talked about it to each other, right? So, how do you deal with this kind of mentality? I mean, I would say that the CTO or the CISO of the bank should be a very worried man, because he's supposed to know all these breaches, and then if it is a breach in one department, he should simultaneously have told all the other departments, look, this has happened in XYZ department. You guys all need to buckle up and enable your IPS IDSs ASAP. That hasn't happened, right? So is it something to do with the threat of reputation loss only, or there is something beyond that? Yeah. So that's first question. Yeah. The second question is probably to Renju. So we have encryption standards which keep changing, and we also have computation power which keeps changing. So since we are talking about staying ahead of the curve, where do you see, sometime or the other, any encryption standard is going to be broken by some computing power? So where do you see it end?
So first of all, thanks for empathizing with CISOs. But having said that, definitely I would not be concerned with the rigor, that goes within the respective companies that we actually are, managing. That, being the central nodal agencies within the enterprise to manage the forensics investigations, and everybody having a clear-cut responsibilities of declaring any kind of breaches that would happen. So definitely, that becomes, a single gateway for not only notification, incident recovery, containment, all those good things that we know of. So definitely, that doesn't cause much of worry.
And on the second part, on the encryption channel, I guess what we observed is that most of the banks is using triple dash encryption algorithm, while it's been high time that we move to a minimum of AES 256 a bit, and then maybe move to AES 512 and RSA 204 at a bit, at a minimum, and more about it. But the problem that what we observe in the industry is that if you take a Tails HSM, which has the limit of how many transactions it can do encryption, decryption per second, the moment we try to increase the algorithm, say from triple dash to AES, the TPS, or the transaction per second, comes down drastically. So unless there's a technology which able to provide much faster encryption, decryption, then only the entire industry will move towards that. That's my take. And more importantly, it's not about just encrypting it. Whatever the encryption standard that we use, it's more about the key management that's been carried out. So if I just get a card number, unless I have a, say, quantum kind of a system for decrypting it, if it's a normal supercomputer, it will take me a lot of time. So on what is the key management that's been used is much more critical than the encryption standard as of now. So to answer one point is that depending on the technology that's available and depends on the transaction per second that's an HSM or other technology will provide, the entire industry will move towards a higher level of encryption algorithm. That's
sure. I hope, Rana, I think that answers your question. Thanks, Renju and Ashutosh for answering. Any other questions that we have? Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
My name is Varun. Okay, my question is for the panelists. I'd like you to reflect on this. You know, one of the things about e-commerce and now mobile systems is that, you know, any John can maybe, you know, provide a service and charge for it through a mobile app now, just like you could do with e-commerce. You know, you just need to get the correct APIs, connect it to your app, and you're done. And you can charge for services, right? Now, you know, there's a trend in India where a lot of brick and mortar companies and a lot of people who don't know much about IT are outsourcing their IT and saying that, oh, you know what, build an app for me. And you know what, I'll just provide services through that. And a lot of homegrown cab companies have done this, have suffered from this, have suffered breaches as well. So what are your reflections on this trend where you take a commercial off-the-shelf kind of app framework and tack on a little bit of, you know, skin it a little bit, add a payment, you know, API to it, and that's it. You know, what implications does that have for security when you're providing services through mobile applications today?
So I think Ramesh, I think, Ashutosh. Okay.
Yeah, so Varun, actually the simple thing is what I feel most of the, many of the small time players are doing is actually by word of mouth, they are actually, you know, just simply imbibing the applications. What they should additionally do is, you know, while they are actually going for adopting those technologies, they should also actually, you know, go for outsourcing the security assessments also independently. Because if they fail to do so and just do one-sided, then they may be in for surprise, as you rightly said.
To me, there is no short answer. The only way you can get away from this is when you move to a push-based payment system. The merchant is not responsible for taking a token from the customer. He just gets notified when a payment is due to him. The API are open. He has the ability to make a call to the API by passing on the transaction ID. He will know whether that amount is due for him. The merchant responsibility should not encompass anything more than that. He's there to provide a service, and all he needs to know is whether or not some payment has come through to him. Push-based payments are the way forward. There's no easier, shorter answer to this at all, unfortunately.
Rishi?
I mean, we will have to take a step. People, process, technology. Let's add another dimension called partnerships, right? So as we partner with the service providers who develop apps for us, I think there has to be very, very strong relationship. Apart from word of mouth, as Ashutosh covered, there has to be independent security assessments. And security is part of the design, not add-on. And once that is taken care, we'll see some movement in that space.
Right. Mr. Harish, how you see within? Same. Okay. Sure. Done. Any other questions before I move on to the next? I think we'll take a last question. Yeah. Okay.
Suresh Menon. Just a question to Ashutosh. Sure. Since we are talking about a lot of criminal activities happening and which will happen, which is already happening and which will happen, so doesn't RBI have a policy of a zero liability or some 10,000 rupees liability till it is proved that it is because of the innocence of the customer that this crime has happened? Is there some policy in place? Just wanted to check.
So are you referring to the regulatory?
Yes, RBI.
Yeah, regulatory guidelines actually speak about that. Now, specifics I will have to just, you know, refer back. But yeah, you are right in saying that, you know, there's a regulatory stipulation of a certain amount till actually, you know, it is notified to the bank.
Correct. People are not aware of this probably. I just wanted. So banks be aware.
Sure. Thanks, Ashutosh. Yeah, I think we'll take the last question.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Samir. I run a company called artbugs.in. I'm an e-commerce owner. There are 10,000 of me out there. We represent the new economy. In the past, we had cases like Harish who lost money online. And I have also lost money on a verified by Visa card from one of the top 3 banks, Harish, not Axis Bank, but one of the top 3. And this happened because the fraud happened in USA, which is supposed to be the secure country, but it seems we are more secure than America. So what happened is, I know everybody in the bank. I said, let me do it like a citizen. I went here, there, everywhere, nothing happened. I went to the bank's Facebook post. I posted 1-2 weeks continuous. And I got a call, sir, your card fraud has been cleared. So that's a great way to counter our banks. As a consumer, I can tell all of you, Go on social media, you will be the champ. Destroy those brands. Let them stop selling those credit cards to you. Tell them where the hell is your security, as this is a security forum. That's the first part. Second part is there's such a huge opportunity. See, as a consumer, I will go to Flipkart and Amazon and buy. Okay, but as a consumer, would you please come to artbucks.in and buy? So why don't they buy? Because there's no, they say, okay, Artbucks is, so I have to do retargeting, I have to do remarketing, I have to throw my brand at you 3 times. And then you people will buy. So there is so much potential for SISA or security vendors. Why don't you sell to us? Come up with a 10,000 rupee product, 1,000 rupee product, I will buy it. I'll get you 10 buyers because we advise to other e-commerce also.
Sure.
And I'm ex-Finacle, so I know all about banking. So.
Sure, for
Thank
sure.
you.
I will be glad to have an offline meeting with you, and we'll try to see what we can do, for sure. Thanks. So I think moving towards, I'll just portray a last question, and probably we'll try to summarize the session. Is probably it will go to, we'll have the Ramesh to answer this first, and then probably Renju. So we have the PCI for the payment data, right? Payment card data, and there's a non-card data which is going to come into the picture now. How you see the set of 7 data components that we have, data elements that we have been replaced with the card data. How you see the future?
I think the mapping can be quite straightforward because you're not trying to reinvent the whole thing. Whether that will be 7 or 5 or 8, it depends on which particular segment you're talking to.
Right.
Maybe the number can be 8 for mobile and 7 for other or 5 for other. I don't know, but you got to bring those two also onto the thing because it need not just be a mobile number against which money is parked. It could even be another number.
Right. So the data anyways, the data anyways is going to be there, right? Elements are going to increase or decrease is something that we need to.
Behind the scenes, what you got to do is remains the same.
Right.
Right from the way you're developing to your operations to your DevOps to your day-to-day operations to how do you ensure everything is in ideal case a virtual machine which does exactly what you do, what you expect it to do the day you got SISA certified.
Sure. So So Renju, how you see basically now being the PCI, you being a PCI QS for almost now a decade, right? Almost a decade now, and you've been certifying organizations. Now with this non-card data coming into the picture and the PCI data into the picture, how you see the things changing? And what are the challenges that you see that you would have?
Now, what I've seen in the market and what I think we are working with Penguin as well is that is first doing a risk assessment on how the technology works.
Right.
Because it's not just the server and the mobile application; it's the process. Because the fraud can happen not just from the external thing. Fraud can happen from a normal mobile user or a merchant.
Absolutely.
So risk assessment is the first approach that what I suggest to all the e-commerce and the mobile wallets thing to do, so that we identify what are the risk factors which is there to do it.
Sure.
And the other point is that to push to get PCI or PADS certified. The reason what I'm saying is that if you're going to sales stores for selling the mobile application, the first question they'll ask is that is the application secure?
Right.
Or is your infra secure? So irrespective of whether you're going to handle card number or not handle card number, if the application is being certified with respect to PCI and PADSs, which we can do, then there will be more acceptance for the technology in either by the banks or by the body and among the users as well. So that's what my intake is.
Sure. Thanks, Renju. I think that's a really. Ramesh, you want to add something? Okay. Ashutosh, coming back to you, with the payment card data within that movement, and you have been certified on PCI. I think you are the first private sector bank in India to be certified on PCI. What are the learnings that you want to share with the industry professionals sitting out here?
So I would say, it's the icing on the cap when it comes to, going for PCI certification with respect to certain specific stipulations around privacy. While information security takes care of most of the things in a very stringent manner, privacy, I would say comes very in a big force, from PCI DSS, which actually becomes a very good thing. It becomes a mandate for everybody in the organization to respect, to understand, and bring, as a DNA, as a, culture. But of course, starting with technology to first accept that, and I think that's a journey in itself, because for the cost considerations and the, time considerations that you may have time to market, all of those things, the building privacy also becomes at times a bit of challenge, but again, once it becomes a culture, then you are there.
Sure, thanks Ashutosh. So before, I think we're running short of the time, so before we summarize our discussion on, thinking about security ahead the curve, can we just have a quick closing remarks before we end the session? I'll start with Rishi.
Yeah, so closing remarks are the factors are changing. We are moving to a new digital world, and it's a shared responsibility. User needs to be educated, and the devices needs to be compliant. For a perfect world, there is no perfect world, as we say, but I think to reach to a stage where we can say that we are somewhat there, I think all these steps needs to be followed.
Sure, thanks Rishi. Mr. Harish.
Yeah, I think from a consumer standpoint, the consumer is now in a very short while shifting from the old checkbook, which was very personal with him, his signature is personal,
right,
to internet banking, password was personal,
right,
to now mobile. I think that transition that the consumer has to take, that has to be simple, and he has to understand it and get an assurance from the ecosystem that this is secure as your checkbook was, right?
Right.
So if we can, as a political ecosystem, ensure that to the end customer, I think the adoption will be phenomenal.
Sure. Thanks, Harish. Ashutosh.
Yeah, so I think I would just reiterate the point that, the fundamental principles what we follow in banking, or maybe, for any wallet operator, payment banks, or any kind of the channel monitoring, those, the fraud management. These basic aspects, reconciliation, these are the fundamental things that must be taken care of. But having said it, on technology side, I would say, watch out for the latest what is happening all across the world, and positive and negative both. Negative, what is happening, how the breaches are happening. Positive, the new technology is emerging. Blockchain, is actually going to change the payment in a very, very significant manner in coming days, or maybe, maximum a couple of years. I think the payment is going to change completely the way as we see it coming. And maybe, the technologies like Caspi, which actually will be a very, very different manner in which the applications are being accessed over the mobile and internet world. So I think one should be really watchful for both the things, negative and positive, and I think that should be the key.
Sure, thanks Ashutosh. Ramesh?
I
I would like to know your conclusive remarks on the mobile wallets front.
Sorry?
Specific on the mobile wallets.
Yeah, sure. To us, very clearly, that is the future. The smartphone will be your payments mechanism. Very clear about that. With all the payments bank, you'll also see various scope for the payments moving out of the switch and the CBS. So when banking is one set of possibilities, payments is a total different ballgame. Right. The moment you differentiate them, tell a user that his life savings is not at risk or his credit limits is not at risk, the ability for more and more people to participate in payments will increase, definitely. And because you're on the internet, the kind of innovations, the kind of enhancements you can make to the whole payment delivery ecosystem, like subsidy, or ensuring the right subsidies reach the right people for the right uses. Closed wallets, wallets where education subsidies can only merchants who are providing educational services, all these kind of things will only happen on the internet in an open platform. And from what Mr. Nandan Nilekani shared, I think that seems to be the way forward as well.
Sure.
On top of that, you can go to the next step of trying to collocate data across different banks. I think it's already started on the cards network.
Right.
And at minimal cost, you can have much. At the end of the day, payment is some financial information.
Sure. Thanks, Ramesh. So I think Renju would be glad to share some views on then securing the applications front, right?
Sure. So from my personal perspective, I believe that PCI have done a very good job in bringing one standard and a lot of guidelines for improving the card industry.
Right.
So same standards and the guidelines can be taken for improving anything related to payments.
Absolutely.
Because just to give you one small example is that like the Apple Pay works is the tokenization. Now, if you ask anyone in the security domain, there's multiple ways of doing tokenization, but the guidelines used by PCI can be really helpful in standardizing the entire industry so that as an industry, we secure the industry and we grow together because innovation is never going to stop.
Absolutely. That's, I think with the innovations, what should be the punching line going, closing the remarks would be like, we have the innovation, the security standards have to also evolve, and we have to keep updating ourselves, and the security awareness which Rishi pointed out, I think it's a key to succeed going forward. Thanks a lot for all the panelists, Rishi, Harish, Ashutosh, Ramesh and Renju. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
I would like all the panelists to stay for a minute. As a token of appreciation, we would like to give you a memento. So I would like to call one of the ex-SISA who is present here. He has done a number of assessments for us. Now he's one of our clients, Mr. Dipanshu Arora. He's a senior manager in Axis Bank.